In the midst of corporate chaos, a millionaire hears something unusual, his cleaning lady's voice flowing naturally in 9 languages. Intrigued, he stops everything and invites her into his office without imagining what he is about to discover. What he does next not only changes her life, it turns the heart of the company upside down. If this story interested you, subscribe to our channel, don't forget to like this video, and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The morning rush at Garland Tower was at its peak. Wall Street executives hurried through the gleaming lobby, their designer shoes clicking against the polished marble floor. No one noticed Eliza Morgan as she knelt in a corner, scrubbing a stubborn coffee stain. Her blue maintenance uniform had the magical power of rendering her invisible in the corporate world of Manhattan's financial district. Eliza had learned to appreciate her invisibility. It was safer that way. For 3 years, she had cleaned the offices of America's elite financial players without being seen, really seen, by any of them. To them, she was just a blur of blue fabric, a nameless service provider who appeared before dawn and disappeared before the important people arrived. At 42, Eliza's hands were rough from years of cleaning chemicals, but her mind remained sharp as a tack. She hummed softly to herself as she worked, occasionally glancing at her watch. In 2 hours, she would need to be at her second job as a waitress at a small diner in Queens. The elevator doors opened, releasing a flood of international visitors. Eliza recognized the distinctive sound of Russian being spoken, her mother's native language. The delegation seemed lost, looking around for guidance in the vast lobby. The regular receptionist was busy on a call, and the visitors were becoming visibly frustrated. Without thinking, Eliza stood up and approached them. "Mogу я вам помочь?" she asked in flawless Russian. "Can I help you?" The delegation turned to her in surprise. A middle-aged man with silver-streaked hair responded gratefully, explaining they were there for a meeting with Richard Garland, the CEO, but couldn't find their way. "14th floor," Eliza replied in Russian, giving them detailed directions. Then, noticing a woman in the group looking uncomfortable, she switched to German. "Brauchen Sie vielleicht eine Toilette? Die Damentoilette ist gleich die Ecke." The woman's face lit up at being addressed in her native tongue and thanked Eliza profusely. What Eliza didn't notice was Richard Garland himself, standing a few feet away watching the entire exchange with undisguised astonishment. The 55-year-old CEO had just returned from getting coffee when he witnessed his building's cleaning staff conversing fluently in multiple languages with his important visitors. "Excuse me," he said, approaching Eliza as the visitors headed toward the elevator. "You work in maintenance here, correct?" Eliza's heart sank. She needed this job. "Yes, sir. I'm sorry if I overstepped." They seemed lost and... "How many languages do you speak?" Garland interrupted, his blue eyes intense with curiosity. Eliza hesitated. "A few." "Define a few," he pressed. "7, fluently. 2 more conversationally," she admitted, looking down at her cleaning cart, suddenly aware of how out of place this conversation was. Richard Garland's eyebrows shot up. 7 languages, fluently. He gestured toward his private elevator. "Would you mind stepping into my office for a moment?" Wasn't really a question. Eliza glanced at her supervisor across the lobby, who was watching with a mixture of confusion and suspicion. She nodded to Garland, wiping her hands nervously on her uniform. The ride up to the 50th floor was silent and awkward. Eliza had cleaned Garland's executive suite hundreds of times, but had never been there during business hours, let alone been invited by the CEO himself. The marble and glass palace that crowned Garland Tower had always seemed like another world entirely, one that existed in a different reality from her own. "Please, sit," Garland said when they entered his office, gesturing to one of the leather chairs in front of his desk. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Manhattan, the morning sun glinting off the skyscrapers. Eliza perched on the edge of the chair, acutely aware of her blue uniform with the Morgan Cleaning Services patch, no relation to her. The irony wasn't lost on her. I've been CEO of Garland International for 15 years, he began, studying her with interest. In that time, I've hired dozens of translators and language specialists with impressive credentials from Ivy League universities. None of them spoke 7 languages fluently. 9, Eliza corrected without thinking, then bit her lip. Sorry, 9, Garland repeated, leaning forward. May I ask, which ones? English, Russian, German, French, Spanish, Italian, Mandarin, Arabic, and enough Japanese to get by, she listed, keeping her voice even despite her discomfort. And where did you study these languages? Eliza's laugh was short and bitter. I didn't, at least not in the way you mean. I'd like to understand, Garland said, his voice softer now, genuine curiosity replacing his initial shock. Eliza looked out at the city below, gathering her thoughts. She rarely talked about herself, especially not to people like Richard. Garland, who lived in penthouses and flew private jets. My mother was Russian from St. Petersburg. She came here in the 90s, Eliza began. She insisted I learn her language alongside English. French and German came from an elderly neighbor who used to watch me after school while my mother worked 3 jobs. She had been a professor in Belgium. Before retiring to Queens, Eliza paused, surprised at herself for sharing so much. But Garland was listening intently, so she continued. Spanish was inevitable in my neighborhood. Mandarin I picked up while working at a restaurant in Chinatown during college. The owner's mother took a liking to me and taught me. Italian came from my late husband's family. Arabic, that was self-taught, using library books and old cassette tapes when I thought I might get a job as a translator. That never panned out. And the Japanese? Online videos and a language exchange app. My daughter is into anime and I wanted to watch it with her without subtitles. Eliza smiled slightly at the memory. Turns out I have a knack for languages. They just make sense to me. Richard Garland sat back in his chair, processing what he'd heard. And yet you're working as a cleaning lady, Eliza finished, for him. Life doesn't always go as planned, Mr. Garland. I was halfway through a linguistics degree at CUNY when my husband became ill. The medical bills, well, you can imagine. After he was gone, there were debts to pay and a daughter to raise. Cleaning pays the bills and the hours let me be home when my daughter needs me. Your daughter? Sophia. She's 22 now, just finished nursing school. Pride crept into Eliza's voice. She graduates next month, first in our family to get a college degree. Garland nodded slowly, then reached for his phone. Janet, cancel my 10 a.m. meeting with the German investors. He paused, listening. Yes, I'm aware they flew in specifically for this. Tell them something urgent has come up, and we'll reschedule for tomorrow. Another pause. And please send up coffee for 2. He hung up and turned back to Eliza. Our translator called in sick this morning. Those visitors you helped in the lobby? They're here for a critical negotiation regarding our expansion into Eastern Europe. My German is passable at best, and my Russian is non-existent. Eliza's eyes widened as she realized what he was suggesting. Mr. Garland, I'm not a professional translator. I've never done anything like that. But you could, he said simply. You just demonstrated that downstairs. The question is, will you? I'm on the clock for Morgan cleaning, she said weakly, knowing it sounded ridiculous even as the words left her mouth. Garland smiled for the first time. I think I can smooth that over with your supervisor. We'll compensate you appropriately, for your time, of course. $500 for the day. Eliza's breath caught. That was more than she made in a week of cleaning. The meeting starts in an hour, Garland continued. That gives you time to go home and change if you'd like. I live in Queens, Eliza said. I wouldn't make it back in time. Garland considered this. Janet can take you to the executive shop downstairs. Find something appropriate and put it on the company card. Why are you doing this? Eliza asked, unable to contain her confusion. You don't know me. I could be terrible at translation. I've always believed that talent finds a way to shine through, Mrs. Morgan, Garland replied. Sometimes it just needs a spotlight. He stood, signaling the end of their conversation. 1 hour, my conference room, and please call me Richard. As Eliza followed Janet out of the office in a daze, she couldn't help but wonder if this was a dream, or if the invisible woman had finally been seen. The navy blue pantsuit felt foreign against Eliza's skin. She stood in the executive restroom, barely recognizing the woman in the mirror. Janet had insisted on the designer outfit, complete with a silk blouse and modest heels. Her usually pulled-back hair now fell in soft waves around her shoulders, courtesy of the building's exclusive salon, which had squeezed her in as a personal favor to Mr. Garland. "This isn't me," Eliza whispered to her reflection. She thought of her daughter Sophia, who would laugh herself silly seeing her mother, dressed like a corporate executive. Or perhaps she would be proud. It was hard to tell with Sophia these days, so focused on building her own future, so determined to leave behind the struggles they'd shared. Eliza's phone buzzed with a text from her second job. "Where are you? Shift started 15 minutes ago." With trembling fingers, she typed back, "Emergency, can't make it today, so sorry." She winced as she hit send, knowing this could cost her the waitressing position at Mabel's diner. 3 years of perfect attendance gone in an instant. A knock at the door startled her. "Mrs. Morgan, they're ready for you in the conference room," Janet called, her voice betraying curiosity about the cleaning lady who had suddenly been elevated to translator status. "Coming," Eliza replied, taking one last look at herself. She straightened her shoulders, remembering her mother's words. "Stand tall even when you feel small." Valentina Morgan had arrived in America with nothing but a suitcase and an unshakable determination that her daughter would have a better life. Valentina had cleaned houses too, but she'd done it with dignity, speaking 4 languages while dusting the mansions of New York's elite. "Knowledge is the one thing they can never take from you," she told Eliza repeatedly. Valentina hadn't lived to see her granddaughter graduate from nursing school, but her wisdom had shaped both their lives. Eliza followed Janet down the hall, conscious of the curious glances from employees who had passed her countless times in her blue uniform without a second look. The conference room doors loomed ahead, frosted glass bearing the Garland International logo, a stylized globe wrapped in laurel leaves. Richard Garland stood as she entered, a reassuring smile on his face. "Ah, Eliza, perfect timing. Gentlemen, ladies, this is Mrs. Morgan, who will be assisting us today." The delegation from earlier rose to greet her, their expressions showing no recognition of the woman who had helped them in the lobby. The transformation from cleaner to executive was that complete. "Shall we begin?" Garland gestured to an empty chair beside him at the head of the table. For the next 3 hours, Eliza moved seamlessly between English, Russian, and German. The negotiations were complex, involving property acquisitions in Moscow and Berlin for Garland's expansion plans. Technical terms occasionally gave her pause, but she navigated around them with skill, asking for clarification when necessary. What surprised her most was how natural it felt. Years of invisibility had taught her to listen, really listen, to the people around her. She didn't just translate words. She conveyed intentions, subtle shifts in tone, cultural nuances that might otherwise have been lost. During a coffee break, the leader of the Russian delegation, Mikhail Petrov, approached her. "Your Russian is excellent, Mrs. Morgan. Where did you study?" "At my mother's kitchen table," Eliza replied in his language, smiling. "She was from St. Petersburg." "Ah, a fellow Petersburger. No wonder your accent is so refined." Petrov seemed delighted. "Mr. Garland is fortunate to have found you. Our previous meetings were less productive." Across the room, Richard Garland watched the exchange with satisfaction. When the delegates returned to their hotel for lunch, he approached Eliza. "That was remarkable," he said simply. "You didn't just translate, you built bridges." Eliza felt a warmth spread through her chest at the genuine appreciation. "Thank you for the opportunity. It was actually fun." "Tell me something," Garland said, lowering his voice. "How does someone with your skills end up cleaning offices?" The bluntness of the question stung, but Eliza had long ago abandoned pretense. "Life happens, Mr. Garland. My husband, Thomas, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer when I was in my second year of college. We had a 5-year-old daughter and no family support except my mother, who was already working herself to exhaustion." She paused, swallowing the familiar lump in her throat. "I dropped out to care for him and work multiple jobs. The medical Bills were like substantial. After he was gone, I still had those bills, plus a daughter to raise alone after my mother became ill too. I'm sorry, Garland said quietly. That must have been incredibly difficult. Eliza shrugged. It was what? It was. I took night classes when I could afford them, but a full degree always remained just out of reach. Eventually, I started my own small cleaning business, which gave me flexible hours to be there for Sophia. When that didn't work out, I joined Morgan Cleaning. The irony of the name wasn't lost on me. And the languages? They were my escape, Eliza admitted. When life gets hard, some people drink. I conjugated verbs. She laughed softly. Learning languages kept my mind sharp when everything else felt like it was falling apart. I'd study while riding the subway between jobs, listen to language tapes while cleaning, practice with Sophia's textbooks when helping with her homework. Garland studied her with newfound respect. Most people would have given up. On what? Learning. That's like giving up breathing. Eliza straightened a stack of papers on the conference table. Besides, I had Sophia watching my every move. What kind of example would that set? A comfortable silence fell between them. Eliza glanced at the clock. The delegation will be back soon. I should prepare for the afternoon session. Actually, Garland said, I'd like to discuss something else first. He gestured to his office across the hall. Shall we? In his office, Richard Garland didn't sit behind his imposing desk as he had earlier. Instead, he chose two chairs by the window, putting them on equal footing. Garland International is expanding aggressively into new markets, he began. Russia, Germany, the UAE, China. We're establishing partnerships that require not just language skills, but cultural intelligence. The ability to read between the lines, to understand motivations beyond words. Eliza nodded, unsure where this was heading. We've been searching for someone to fill a new position, Director of International Cultural Affairs, someone who can bridge worlds, who understands both boardrooms and, well, the rest of the world, the real world. Sounds like an important role, Eliza commented. It is, and I'd like to offer it to you. Eliza stared at him, certain she had misheard. I'm sorry. I want you to join Garland International in an executive capacity, Garland repeated. The salary would start at $150,000 annually, with benefits and performance bonuses. The room seemed to tilt slightly. That was more money than Eliza had made in the past 3 years combined. This is absurd, she finally managed. I don't have a degree. I've never worked in an office. Until this morning, I was scrubbing your floors. And in 3 hours, you've demonstrated more skill and insight than people I've employed for years, Garland countered. Degrees are papers, results are reality. But the delegates are already asking if you'll be present for tomorrow's session, he continued. Petrov mentioned you're the best interpreter they've worked with in America. Do you know what that means for these negotiations? Eliza's mind raced. It's one meeting, Mr. Garland. You can't possibly base a hiring decision on that. Richard, he corrected gently, and I've built $1 billion company by recognizing opportunity when I see it. You're an opportunity, Eliza, for us both. Before she could respond, Janet knocked and entered. The delegation has returned, Mr. Garland. We'll continue this discussion later, he promised, standing. For now, let's focus on closing this deal. The afternoon session proved even more successful than the morning. By 5 o'clock, preliminary agreements had been signed, hands had been shaken, and the delegation departed with genuine smiles and warm words for both Garland and Eliza. The conference room emptied. Eliza remained seated, overwhelmed by the day's events. Her phone buzzed again, a text from Mabel's diner. Don't bother coming back. Position filled. She should have felt devastated. Instead, a strange calm settled over her as she looked out at the New York skyline, the setting sun painting the buildings in gold and amber. For the first time in years, Eliza Morgan felt something dangerous stirring in her chest. Hope. Ready to finish our conversation? Richard Garland asked from the doorway. Eliza turned to him, her decision already made. Yes, she said simply. I think I am. Eliza's modest apartment in Queens felt different that evening. The familiar, worn furniture, the faded wallpaper, the creaky floorboards. They were the same, but she wasn't. She set her keys on the kitchen counter and kicked off the designer heels that had been pinching her feet for hours. "Mom? Is that you?" Sophia called from her bedroom. "You're home early. Did something happen at work?" Eliza took a deep breath. "You could say that." Sophia appeared in the doorway, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, nursing textbooks spread open, on her bed behind her. At 22, she was the spitting image of her father. Same warm brown eyes, same determined set to her jaw. "What's with the fancy clothes and the hair?" Her eyes widened. "Wait, did you have a job interview? Why didn't you tell me?" "Not exactly an interview," Eliza said, sinking onto their threadbare couch. "More like an unexpected opportunity." As Eliza recounted the day's events, Sophia's expression shifted from disbelief to excitement. "Director of International Cultural Affairs? Mom, that's incredible. When do you start?" "I haven't accepted yet," Eliza admitted. "It feels too sudden. Too unreal." Sophia sat beside her mother, taking her hands. "What's really bothering you? This is what you've always deserved." Eliza looked around their small apartment, the home they'd made together through years of struggle. "I've spent so long being invisible, Sophia. I'm not sure I know how to be seen." "Mom," Sophia's voice was firm, "you've always been seen by the people who matter. Now everyone else gets to see what I've always known." She squeezed Eliza's hands. "You've put your life on hold for me for 17 years. It's your turn now." Later that night, after Sophia had returned to her studies, Eliza sat at their kitchen table with a legal pad, making lists of pros and cons. The pros column grew lengthy: financial security, using her skills, challenging work, respect, setting an example for Sophia. The cons column contained just one item: fear. By morning, her decision was made. She called the number Richard Garland had given her and accepted the position. "Excellent," Garland's voice carried genuine pleasure. "HR will send over the paperwork. Today, can you start Monday?" Monday? Eliza's heart raced. That was just 4 days away. "What about background checks, references?" "Already in progress. One benefit of you having worked in our building for 3 years, security clearance is a breeze." He paused. "I've arranged a clothing allowance as well. Janet will help you with that tomorrow." "That's not necessary. It's standard for executive positions," Garland interrupted smoothly. "Just part of the package." After hanging up, Eliza called her supervisor at Morgan Cleaning to resign. The conversation was brief and cold. No congratulations, no well wishes, just an irritated sigh and a request to return her uniform. The following days passed in a blur of paperwork, shopping trips with Janet, and hasty preparations. Sophia helped her practice introductions and small talk for her new role, giggling at her mother's nervousness. "You negotiated multi-million-dollar deals in 3 languages yesterday," Sophia reminded her. "I think you can handle saying good morning to your new colleagues." Monday arrived with a mixture of anticipation and dread. Eliza entered Garland Tower through the main entrance for the first time, nodding to the security guard who had seen her mop the lobby countless times. He did a double-take at her transformation, but said nothing. The executive elevator whisked her to the 48th floor, not the 50th where Garland's office was located, but the floor below, housing senior management. Janet met her with a tight smile and led her to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. "Mr. Garland wanted you to have a view," Janet explained, handing her a key card. "Your assistant will be in shortly to help you set up your computer and go through your schedule." "My assistant?" Eliza echoed faintly. "Rebecca Peters. She's been with the company for 5 years. Janet's voice was professional but cool. "The department heads will meet with you individually throughout the week to brief you on ongoing international projects. Your first meeting is at 10 with Victoria Winters, our Chief Financial Officer." Left alone, Eliza slowly circled her new domain. The office was larger than the entire living room of her apartment. A sleek desk dominated one wall, while a small conference table occupied another corner. The view overlooked the East River, the morning sun glinting off the water. A silver nameplate on the desk caught her eye. Eliza Morgan, Director of International Cultural Affairs. Seeing her name displayed so prominently sent a shiver down her spine. This was real. A knock at the door announced the arrival of Rebecca Peters, a sharp-featured woman in her late 20s with intelligent eyes and a tablet clutched to her chest. "Mrs. Morgan, I'm Rebecca, your executive assistant." Her handshake was firm, her assessment of Eliza swift and clinical. "I've prepared an orientation folder for you and scheduled introductory meetings with key personnel. Coffee preference?" "Black is fine," Eliza replied, slightly overwhelmed by the younger woman's efficiency. Rebecca nodded and set to work, explaining systems and protocols with rapid-fire precision. By 9:30, Eliza had been briefed on everything from the company email to the executive dining room. Rebecca was undeniably competent, but there was a reserve in her manner that suggested uncertainty about her new boss. "Rebecca," Eliza said finally, "I'm sure you're wondering about my background." The assistant paused. "It's not my place to question Mr. Garland's hiring decisions. But the rumors are already circulating, aren't they?" A slight flush colored Rebecca's cheeks. "There's been discussion." "I imagine so." Eliza straightened in her chair. "Yes, until last week I was part of the cleaning staff. No, I don't have a college degree. Yes, I speak 9 languages fluently. And no, I'm not sleeping with Richard Garland." Rebecca's eyes widened at the bluntness. "I prefer to address things directly," Eliza continued. "We'll be working closely together, and I'd rather start with honesty. I have a lot to learn about corporate protocol, but I'm a quick study. I'd appreciate your guidance on the politics of this place." Something in Rebecca's posture relaxed slightly. "That's refreshing, Mrs. Morgan." "Eliza, please." Rebecca nodded. "You should know that Victoria Winters was being groomed for the international division before your position was created. She's not thrilled about the restructuring." "Ah," Eliza absorbed this information. "Thank you for the heads up." At precisely 10 o'clock, Victoria Winters swept into Eliza's office without knocking. Tall, sleek, and exquisitely dressed in a crimson power suit, she exuded confidence and ambition from every pore. "So you're Garland's new project," Victoria said by way of greeting, her smile not reaching her eyes. "I've heard fascinating things." Rebecca discreetly excused herself, closing the door behind her. "Victoria Winters, CFO," the woman continued, extending a manicured hand. "Richard asked me to bring you up to speed on our international financial situation." "I appreciate that," Eliza replied, gesturing to the small conference table. "Shall we?" For the next hour, Victoria outlined Garland International's global investments with razor-sharp precision, occasionally dropping technical terms that she clearly didn't expect Eliza to understand. But years of self-education had given Eliza a broader knowledge base than most suspected. She asked intelligent questions that gradually eroded Victoria's condescension. "You're full of surprises, Mrs. Morgan," Victoria finally conceded, though her tone remained cool. "But international business is about more than languages and a quick mind. It's about relationships, networks, credentials. Our partners expect a certain pedigree." "I imagine results matter more than pedigree in the end," Eliza replied evenly. Victoria's smile tightened. "In an ideal world, perhaps, but we live in this one." She gathered her papers. "The executive committee meets Thursdays at 3. It should be interesting to see how you fit in." After Victoria left, Eliza released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The subtext had been clear: you don't belong here. The rest of the day followed a similar pattern. Each department head who came to welcome her carried an undercurrent of skepticism or outright disapproval. By 5 o'clock, Eliza's confidence had taken a beating, though she maintained a professional facade. As she was preparing to leave, Richard Garland appeared in her doorway. "How was day 1? "Educational," Eliza replied diplomatically. Garland's laugh was understanding. "They're testing you. It's normal." "Victoria Winters made it quite clear she doesn't think I belong here." Victoria wanted international for herself, Garland confirmed. But she lacks what you have naturally, genuine cross-cultural understanding. She sees other countries as markets, not people. She sees me as a charity case, Eliza observed. Your project, as she put it. What matters is what I see, Garland replied firmly. Potential, intelligence, resilience, the rest will follow. He glanced at his watch. I have a dinner meeting, but I wanted to check in. Don't let them intimidate you, Eliza. You earned this position the moment you spoke to those delegates in their own language. After he left, Eliza stood at her window, watching the city lights come alive as dusk fell. The day had been challenging, but not unexpected. She had faced prejudice before, different kind, same result. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. How was your first day as a boss lady? Eliza smiled and typed back, harder than cleaning toilets, but the view is better. As she gathered her things to leave, she noticed a small envelope that had been slipped under her door. Inside was a simple note card with flowing script. Some of us see you. Welcome aboard. Kay. She didn't know who Kay was, but the message warmed her heart. Perhaps she wasn't as alone as Victoria Winters wanted her to believe. Tucking the card into her purse, Eliza left her new office with renewed determination. Tomorrow would be another battle, but tonight she had a small victory to celebrate. 3 weeks into her new role, Eliza had established a rhythm. Each morning she arrived at 7:30 a.m. before most executives, giving herself time to review international news in multiple languages. By 8:15, she'd compiled relevant updates for departments affected by global developments. This unrequested service had already earned grudging appreciation from several division heads. Rebecca had become a quiet ally, efficiently managing Eliza's increasingly packed schedule while providing subtle guidance on company politics. Mr. Alvarez from legal actually likes his coffee with cream, despite what he says, she'd whisper. Or, Mrs. Chen from R&D responds better to direct communication, no small talk. These small insights helped Eliza navigate the complex social landscape of Garland International. She'd learned to recognize the difference between colleagues who were merely cautious about her unusual appointment and those, like Victoria Winters, who actively resented her presence. The mysterious Kay, who had left the welcome note, remained anonymous, though Eliza had her suspicions about Kevin Zhang, a quiet VP of technology who had been surprisingly supportive in meetings. On this particular Wednesday morning, Eliza arrived to find Rebecca already at her desk, looking unusually concerned. What's wrong? Eliza asked, setting down her coffee. The Moroccan delegation arrived a day early, Rebecca explained. They're waiting in the main conference room right now. Mr. Garland is stuck in traffic, and the translator we booked for tomorrow is unavailable. Today. Eliza's heart quickened. The Moroccan negotiations were crucial, a potential partnership for solar energy development in North Africa that could transform Garland International's renewable energy portfolio. Who's with them now? Victoria Winters, Rebecca replied. She speaks French, but the delegation's leader apparently prefers Arabic. Eliza nodded, making a quick decision. Tell Victoria I'll be there in 5 minutes. After a quick review of the project briefing, Eliza headed to the conference room. Through the glass doors, she could see Victoria attempting to engage the 5 Moroccan businessmen in French. Their responses were polite but reserved, the conversation clearly strained. Eliza entered with a warm smile. Assalamu alaikum, she greeted in Arabic, using the Moroccan dialect she'd learned years ago from a regular customer at a restaurant where she'd worked. The effect was immediate. The delegation's leader, Hamid Ben Ali, responded with visible surprise and pleasure, switching from formal French to his native Arabic. Wa alaykumu assalam. You speak our language. Wonderful. Victoria's expression froze somewhere between shock and irritation. Mrs. Morgan, I wasn't aware you were joining us. I heard our guests arrived early and thought I might assist, Eliza replied smoothly, extending her hand to Mr. Ben Ali. Eliza Morgan, Director of International Cultural Affairs. The next 2 hours transformed the meeting's entire tone. Where there had been formality, Now there was genuine connection. Eliza didn't just translate. She built rapport, making cultural references that delighted the Moroccans and asking questions about their families, a crucial element of North African business culture that Victoria had overlooked in her rush to discuss financials. By the time Richard Garland arrived, looking harried from his delayed commute, the atmosphere was warm and convivial. The Moroccans were showing Eliza photos of their children on their phones, while Victoria sat in increasingly stony silence. "I see you've met our secret weapon," Garland said, joining them with a relieved smile. "Indeed," Benali replied in accented English. "Mrs. Morgan speaks our language better than many born in Casablanca. It is a sign of respect we do not take lightly." The meeting concluded with a tentative agreement to move forward, far more progress than had been expected from this preliminary discussion. As the delegation departed for a tour of Garland's research facilities, Victoria remained behind, her expression unreadable. "That was quite a performance," she said, when she and Eliza were alone. "It wasn't a performance," Eliza replied. "It was communication. The board meets next week to review your probationary period," Victoria continued as if Eliza hadn't spoken. "I would temper your expectations." "Is there a specific concern about my work you'd like to discuss?" Eliza asked directly. Victoria's laugh was brittle. "Your work is a novelty act, Mrs. Morgan. Yes, you speak languages. Impressive. But this company requires more than party tricks. It requires pedigree, education, connections." "Results," Eliza corrected quietly. "It requires results, which I'm delivering." "We'll see what the board thinks." Victoria gathered her tablet and stood. "This isn't a Cinderella story. Real life doesn't work that way." After Victoria left, Eliza remained seated, her hands trembling, slightly despite her outward composure. The confrontation had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. Victoria wielded significant influence with the board, and Eliza knew her position remained precarious despite Garland's support. A text from Richard arrived. "Heard about the meeting. Brilliant work. Dinner tonight to discuss next steps." Eliza declined politely, citing plans with Sophia. The truth was she needed space to think, to strategize. Victoria's warning about the board review couldn't be ignored. When she returned to her office, Rebecca was waiting with a strange expression. "The file you requested on the Japanese technology partnership," she said, handing over a folder. "I added some notes you might find interesting." Inside, alongside the official documents, was a handwritten page in Rebecca's neat script. "Victoria has been systematically undermining you with the board. She's scheduled a special review of your department for next Thursday. Sources say she has 3 board members convinced your position is unnecessary." Eliza looked up at Rebecca, who gave an almost imperceptible nod before returning to her desk. That evening, instead of going directly home, Eliza stopped at a small park near her apartment. The early summer air was warm, the sky painted in deepening shades of purple and orange. She sat on a bench, watching children play on the swings while their parents chatted nearby. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up for dinner. Love you." Eliza smiled, imagining her daughter in her nursing scrubs, learning to save lives. All the sacrifices had been worth it for that alone. But now she faced a new challenge. Victoria wasn't wrong about one thing. Eliza lacked the traditional credentials her colleagues possessed. Her appointment had been unconventional, based on Garland's instinct rather than a standard hiring process. If the board decided to eliminate her position, she had no safety net, no prestigious degree to fall back on. As twilight settled over the park, Eliza made her decision. She wouldn't fight Victoria on Victoria's terms. Instead, she would do what she'd always done: adapt, work harder, prove her worth through results. The next morning, Eliza arrived at the office at 6 a.m. By the time Rebecca appeared at 8, she had filled 3 whiteboards with a comprehensive strategy for international expansion, incorporating cultural insights specific to each target market. I need you to set up meetings with each regional VP today, Eliza instructed, and find out who's on the committee for the board review. Rebecca raised an eyebrow but nodded. Already on it. I also took the liberty of requesting the financial projections for the Moroccan project. They're impressively positive after yesterday's meeting. By lunchtime, Eliza had met with 3 regional VPs, presenting tailored strategies for their markets. Kevin Zhang, her suspected ally Kay, was particularly enthusiastic about her proposals for the Asian markets. "This is exactly what we've been missing," he said, studying her cultural integration plan for the Japanese partnership. "How did you know about the regional rivalry between our potential partners in Osaka and Tokyo?" "I read the local business news in Japanese," Eliza replied simply. "Sometimes important details don't make it into the English translations." Kevin shook his head admiringly. "Victoria doesn't stand a chance if you keep this up." "So she is behind the special review?" Kevin's expression turned serious. "It's not just Victoria. There's a faction on the board that believes Richard made your appointment for political reasons. Diversity optics, that sort of thing." Eliza stiffened. "I see. For what it's worth, I think they're dead wrong," Kevin added. "And after today's presentation, so will the Asia division." By the end of the week, Eliza had met with every regional team, identifying opportunities and solving long-standing issues that had been lost in translation, literally and figuratively. She discovered a clause in the German contracts that had been mistranslated years ago, potentially saving the company millions in tax liabilities. She smoothed over a cultural misunderstanding with Chinese suppliers that had caused production delays for months. Each small victory built her case, but Victoria remained a formidable opponent. Through Rebecca's network, Eliza learned that the CFO was preparing a detailed presentation for the board, arguing that Eliza's function could be handled by regional consultants at a fraction of the cost. The weekend provided no respite. Eliza spent Saturday researching board members, preparing counter-arguments, and developing a comprehensive international strategy document. Sophia found her at the kitchen table at midnight, surrounded by papers and her ancient laptop. "Mom, you need to sleep," Sophia insisted, closing the laptop. "You've been at this for 16 hours. "I can't stop now," Eliza replied, rubbing her tired eyes. "The board meeting is Thursday." Sophia pulled up a chair. "Tell me what's happening." Eliza explained the situation, Victoria's opposition, the board review, the implicit challenge to her qualifications. "If I lose this position, you won't," Sophia said, firmly. "But even if you did, you'd survive. We always have." Eliza smiled tiredly at her daughter's confidence. "When did you become the wise one?" "I learned from the best." Sophia gathered the scattered papers into a neat pile. "Now get some sleep. You can't impress anyone if you're falling asleep in meetings." Monday morning brought unexpected news. The Moroccan delegation had signed a preliminary agreement, citing their positive experience with Eliza as a significant factor in their decision. Richard Garland was ecstatic. "This is exactly why I created your position," he told Eliza during their morning briefing. "You've accomplished in 3 weeks what our previous team couldn't do in 6 months. Victoria still believes I'm unnecessary," Eliza replied, "and apparently she has board support." Garland's expression darkened. "Victoria sees you as competition. She's ambitious, and she doesn't like surprises." "Am I a surprise, Richard?" "The best kind," he smiled. "Don't worry about the board. Your results speak for themselves." But as Thursday approached, Eliza's anxiety grew. She'd built a solid case based on measurable outcomes, but corporate politics didn't always follow rational paths. Victoria had connections, history, and the unspoken advantage of fitting the expected executive mold. On Wednesday afternoon, Rebecca knocked on Eliza's door with an unusual request. "There's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but I think you should meet with her." Curious, Eliza agreed. A moment later, a young woman entered, mid-20s, professionally dressed but visibly nervous. "Mrs. Morgan? My name is Daniela Suarez. I work in accounting on the 32nd floor." She twisted her hands together. I hope it's okay that I came. I wanted to tell you something before your board review tomorrow." "Please sit," Eliza invited, intrigued. "How can I help you, Daniela?" The young woman took a deep breath. "I wanted you to know that you've changed things here, even in just a few weeks. For people like me, people who don't come from privilege, who had to fight for every opportunity, seeing you in this position matters." Eliza was touched but confused. "Thank you, but how did you know about my background?" Daniela smiled shyly. "Everyone knows, the woman who went from cleaning the building to an executive office. It's the best gossip this place has had in years." She leaned forward. "But it's more than gossip to some of us, it's hope." As Daniela left, Eliza sat in thoughtful silence. She'd been so focused on proving herself to Victoria and the board that she hadn't considered the broader impact of her unlikely journey. Perhaps there was more at stake here than just her career. With renewed determination, she returned to her preparation for tomorrow's showdown. Victoria might have tradition on her side, but Eliza had something more powerful: the truth of what she'd already accomplished and the promise of what she could still do. The executive boardroom of Garland International occupied the entire northeast corner of the 50th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Manhattan, though on this particular Thursday, dark clouds gathered on the horizon, promising a summer storm. Eliza arrived 15 minutes early, her presentation materials meticulously organized, her navy blue suit, one of her new executive wardrobe purchases, immaculately pressed. Rebecca had briefed her on the seating arrangement, the order of presentations, and the particular concerns of each board member. "Victoria presents first, then you'll have your chance to respond," Rebecca had explained. "Mr. Garland will moderate, but tradition dictates he remains neutral during departmental reviews." The boardroom was empty when Eliza entered, giving her a moment of solitude to gather her thoughts. She ran her fingers along the polished mahogany table, marveling at how far she had come. 6 weeks ago, she had cleaned this room in the pre-dawn hours, emptying trash bins and wiping fingerprints from the glass tabletop. Now she would sit at this table as an equal, at least in title. Board members began arriving in 2s and 3s, their expressions ranging from polite curiosity to thinly veiled skepticism as they greeted her. Victoria swept in last, immaculate in a charcoal grey suit, her presentation materials handed off to an assistant who arranged them at her designated seat. "Mrs. Morgan," Victoria acknowledged with a thin smile. "Best of luck today." "Likewise," Eliza replied evenly. Richard Garland called the meeting to order precisely at 2 p.m. After brief introductions, he explained the purpose of the special review: to evaluate the newly created International Cultural Affairs Division and its director's probationary performance. As this position represents a significant addition to our executive structure, the board has requested a comprehensive assessment, Garland concluded. Victoria Winters, our CFO, will present the financial implications first, followed by Eliza Morgan's departmental report. Victoria rose gracefully, activating the room's presentation system with practiced ease. Her presentation was devastatingly effective, precise, data-driven, and carefully constructed to undermine Eliza without appearing overtly hostile. While the concept of cultural competency in international business is valid, Victoria began, the question before us is one of resource allocation. The current structure, with a full executive-level position and support staff, represents an annual investment of approximately $400,000. She proceeded to outline how these functions could be distributed among existing departments or outsourced to regional consultants at a projected savings of $250,000 annually. Charts and graphs illustrated her points with merciless clarity. Furthermore, Victoria continued, there is the question of qualifications. Traditional executive appointments at Garland International require at minimum an advanced degree and 10 years of relevant experience. Alternative structures would allow us to engage individuals with appropriate credentials on an as-needed basis. The unspoken message was clear. Eliza lacked the qualifications this position should require. Victoria concluded with a summary of her recommendations, dissolve the new department, redistribute essential functions, and engage specialized consultants for language services when needed. Her presentation had lasted exactly 20 minutes, professional, unemotional, and seemingly irrefutable. The board members nodded appreciatively at Victoria's thoroughness. One older gentleman made a note on his legal pad that Eliza could read from her position. Logical solution. "Thank you, Victoria," Garland said. "Eliza, your response?" Eliza stood, momentarily aware of the contrast between Victoria's polished, corporate presentation style and her own less conventional approach. But she had prepared thoroughly, and more importantly, she had results. "Thank you for the opportunity to address the board," she began. "I'd like to start not with hypotheticals or projections, but with actual outcomes from the past 6 weeks. Rather than relying on PowerPoint, Eliza distributed folders containing before and after documentation of specific international projects she had impacted. As board members opened these materials, she walked them through key examples. "The first case study involves our German manufacturing contracts," she explained. "A mistranslation in Section 7.3 of the original agreement, which had gone unnoticed for 3 years, was exposing us to significant tax liability. Correction of this single error saved the company $1.4 million. She continued with 4 additional examples, each meticulously documented. The Moroccan solar project that had advanced after years of stagnation. A Japanese technology partnership that had been rejuvenated through cultural mediation. A Russian distribution agreement that had been renegotiated with more favorable terms. And a Brazilian expansion that had accelerated after Eliza identified a critical cultural misstep in the original approach. These 5 projects alone represent a combined benefit of approximately $9.7 million in either cost savings or revenue generation over the next fiscal year," Eliza concluded. "That's a return of nearly 25 times the department's annual budget." The board members exchanged glances, clearly reassessing the financial argument Victoria had presented, but Eliza wasn't finished. "However, the value of cultural intelligence in international business goes beyond quantifiable financial returns," she continued. "It builds relationships that transform one-time transactions into long-term partnerships." She pulled out her final piece of evidence, letters from international partners, specifically mentioning the difference her involvement had made in their relationship with Garland International. "Mr. Benali from Morocco writes that our respect for his language and customs transformed a business discussion into a meaningful partnership. Mr. Tanaka from Japan notes that our understanding of regional sensitivities demonstrated a level of respect uncommon among Western companies." Victoria shifted uncomfortably in her seat as Eliza continued. "As for the question of qualifications," Eliza said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "I acknowledge that my path to this position was unconventional. I don't have an Ivy League degree. I don't have the traditional corporate experience you might expect." She paused, making eye contact with each board member. "What I do have is fluency in 9 languages, not learned in classrooms, but through immersion and necessity. I have first-hand understanding of different cultures gained through real-world experience, rather than textbooks, and I have the perspective of someone who has seen this very company from a vantage point most executives never will." The oldest board member, Harold Fleming, leaned forward. "What vantage point is that, Mrs. Morgan?" "From the outside looking in, Mr. Fleming, from the position of the invisible workers who keep this building running, from the view of the immigrant families in my neighborhood who see places like Garland Tower as another world entirely," Victoria interjected, her composure slipping slightly. "This is precisely my concern. Mrs. Morgan lacks the business background this position requires. Emotional appeals about perspective don't change that fundamental reality." "With respect, Ms. Winters," Eliza replied, "results change reality, and the results speak for themselves." The board discussion that followed was vigorous. Several members, who had seemed skeptical initially, now asked Eliza pointed questions about specific international strategies. Others debated the financial projections Victoria had presented, versus the actual outcomes Eliza had documented. Throughout the exchange, Richard Garland remained neutral, as protocol required, though Eliza caught a glimmer of approval in his eyes when she effectively countered a particularly challenging question about long-term sustainability. After nearly an hour of discussion, Garland called for a vote on Victoria's proposal to dissolve the department. The tension in the room was palpable as each board member registered their position. When the final tally was announced, Victoria's proposal had been rejected by a margin of 7-5. The International Cultural Affairs Department would continue with Eliza Morgan confirmed as its director beyond the probationary period. Victoria gathered her materials with rigid composure, avoiding eye contact with Eliza. As board members filed out, several stopped to congratulate Eliza or express interest in working more closely with her department. Harold Fleming, the elder statesman of the board who had questioned her earlier, lingered until they were nearly alone. "You surprised us today, Mrs. Morgan," he said, his voice gravelly with age. "In a good way, I hope," Eliza replied. Indeed. He studied her with shrewd eyes that had seen decades of corporate politics. "Victoria isn't the only one who opposed your appointment. Many of us questioned Richard's judgment. And now I wonder what else we've been missing by looking in all the usual places." Fleming extended his hand. "Well done. But be prepared. You've won a battle, not the war." After everyone had gone, Eliza remained in the boardroom, allowing herself a moment to process what had happened. The relief was overwhelming. She hadn't realized how much tension she'd been carrying until it lifted from her shoulders. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "How did it go?" Before she could reply, Richard Garland returned to the boardroom, a broad smile on his face. "Congratulations," he said warmly. "You were extraordinary." "Thank you for giving me the chance," Eliza replied, "and for remaining neutral even when Victoria was at her most cutting." "Protocol demands it," Garland said with a wink, though it was difficult to keep a straight face when you presented that letter from Benali. Victoria looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. They shared a laugh, the formality of their professional relationship momentarily relaxed by shared triumph. "What happens now?" Eliza asked. "Now you build," Garland replied simply. "You've proven you belong here. The next step is to make yourself indispensable." As if on cue, Rebecca appeared in the doorway. "Sorry to interrupt, but the Beijing office is on the line. There's an urgent situation with the contract negotiations." Garland raised an eyebrow. "Looks like you're already indispensable. I'll leave you to it." The crisis with Beijing consumed the remainder of Eliza's day and extended well into the evening. Her cultural misunderstanding had nearly derailed months of negotiations, and it took all her diplomatic skill and fluent Mandarin to salvage the situation. By the time she left Garland Tower, the summer storm had passed, leaving the city streets glistening under streetlights. Eliza's exhaustion was tempered by satisfaction. The Beijing deal was back on track, and her position was secure. As her taxi navigated the late-night traffic toward Queens, Eliza's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Congratulations on your victory today. Not everyone at GI is against you. Some of us are inspired." Daniela from accounting, Eliza realized. The message touched her deeply, a reminder that her presence at Garland International meant something beyond her individual success. Home, Eliza found Sophia asleep on the couch, surrounded by nursing textbooks. She gently covered her daughter with a blanket, reflecting on how their roles had subtly shifted. Once it had been Sophia waiting up for her mother to return from late cleaning shifts. Now, Sophia had waited up for news of an executive board meeting. The next morning, Eliza arrived at the E-Chair office earlier than usual, energized despite the previous day's exhaustion. The hallways were quiet, most executives not due for hours yet. She was surprised to find Victoria Winters waiting outside her office, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. "Victoria," Eliza acknowledged cautiously. "Good morning." "Is it?" Victoria's voice was bitter. I've just spent the night redoing financial projections because of your little victory. Eliza unlocked her office door. Would you like to come in? We should talk. Victoria hesitated, then followed Eliza inside. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. I don't understand why Richard chose you, Victoria finally said. I've given everything to this company for 15 years. I have 2 MBAs. I've sacrificed relationships, family, everything for my career, and then he brings in you. The contempt in her voice was unmistakable, but Eliza also heard something else, pain and perhaps fear. It's not a zero-sum game, Victoria, Eliza said quietly. My success doesn't diminish yours. Doesn't it? There's only room for so many women at the top. That's the reality. Only if we accept it as reality. Eliza met Victoria's gaze directly. We could fight each other, or we could change the system that makes us think we have to. Victoria laughed harshly. How inspirational. Did you read that in a fortune cookie? No, Eliza replied calmly. I learned it raising a daughter alone while working 3 jobs. Competition for scraps never got any of us very far. Something in Victoria's expression shifted, not softening exactly, but recalibrating. This doesn't make us friends. I don't expect it to, but perhaps we can be effective colleagues. Victoria straightened, reassuming her professional mask. The Morocco project needs a detailed cultural briefing for the engineering team. Have it on my desk by Friday. Of course, Eliza agreed, recognizing the olive branch for what it was, conditional, fragile, but real. After Victoria left, Eliza stood at her window, watching the city wake up. The board victory had been essential, but this brief conversation with Victoria felt equally significant. Change wouldn't come all at once, but it was coming. As the morning sun illuminated the skyline, Eliza thought about all the invisible workers in the building, the cleaning staff, security guards, maintenance crews, and wondered how many of them harbored hidden talents and dreams. How many others like her were waiting to be seen. A plan began forming in her mind, something beyond her departmental responsibilities, something that could transform Garland International from within. It was ambitious, perhaps even naive, but then again, so was thinking a cleaning lady could become an executive. With a renewed sense of purpose, Eliza Morgan turned from the window and began to write. 6 months had transformed Eliza's life beyond recognition. Her department had expanded to include 5 staff members, each selected for their unique combination of language skills and cultural knowledge rather than traditional credentials. The International Cultural Affairs Division, once Victoria's target for elimination, was now credited with facilitating Garland International's most successful expansion year in company history. Eliza's apartment in Queens had been replaced by a modest but comfortable condo, closer to Manhattan, cutting her commute by 40 minutes each way. Sophia had moved into campus housing for her final year of nursing school, though she still came home most weekends, filling the new space with her laughter and endless stories about hospital rotations. On this crisp October morning, Eliza stood before the mirror adjusting her silk scarf, a gift from the Moroccan delegation after the successful completion of their joint venture. The woman reflected back at her, still sometimes seemed like a stranger, confident, polished, respected. The cleaning lady's uniform was long gone, replaced by a wardrobe that communicated authority without pretension. Her phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Ready for the big presentation. Today's executive committee meeting would be unlike any other. For weeks, Eliza had been working on a proposal that extended far beyond her departmental responsibilities, a comprehensive initiative she called Hidden Talent. The concept had come to her that morning after the board review, inspired by Victoria's reluctant acknowledgement and Daniela's message of solidarity. As ready as I'll ever be, she texted back, gathering her presentation materials. The taxi ride to Garland Tower was spent in quiet rehearsal of her key points. This presentation was different from her defense before the board. It wasn't about proving her own worth anymore, but about creating opportunities for others. The executive floor buzzed with activity when she arrived. Rebecca met her at the elevator, tablet in hand. Morning briefing. Notes, she said, falling into step beside Eliza. The Milan office confirmed they've resolved that supply chain issue. The Beijing team sent revised projections for Q4. They're up 12% from last quarter. And Victoria called to say she'll be 5 minutes late to the committee meeting. Victoria called you directly? Eliza asked, surprised. The CFO usually communicated through her own assistant, maintaining the hierarchical distance she preferred. Actually, she called you, but you were already in the taxi, Rebecca clarified. She sounded different, almost friendly. Eliza smiled. Her relationship with Victoria had evolved into something resembling mutual respect, if not quite friendship. Their departments now collaborated regularly, combining Victoria's financial acumen with Eliza's cultural insights to craft more effective international strategies. Any word from Harold Fleming? Eliza asked, referring to the elder board member, who had become an unexpected ally. He confirmed he'll attend the meeting as your guest, Rebecca replied. He's quite intrigued by your proposal, though he wouldn't say why. The executive conference room filled quickly. Richard Garland took his customary seat at the head of the table, with department heads arranged along both sides. Victoria arrived, exactly 5 minutes late as promised, nodding to Eliza as she took her seat. Before we begin our regular agenda, Garland announced, Eliza Morgan has requested time to present a new initiative for consideration. Eliza, the floor is yours. Taking a deep breath, Eliza activated the presentation screen and faced her colleagues. 6 months ago, I stood in this room fighting for my position, she began. Today, I'm here to propose something that goes beyond any single department or individual. I'm here to talk about wasted potential. She advanced to the first slide, which displayed a simple statistic. 47% of employees with college degrees use less than half of their required skills in their current positions. Garland International employs over 5,000 people worldwide. Eliza continued. From executives to maintenance staff, we conduct exhaustive searches for external talent while overlooking the hidden abilities within our own walls. She shared several anonymous examples. A security guard with an engineering degree from his home country that wasn't recognized in the US. An administrative assistant fluent in 4 languages but never asked to use them. A cafeteria worker with exceptional organizational skills who managed inventory more efficiently than the system designed by expensive consultants. My own story is not unique, Eliza said, making eye contact with each executive in turn. What's unique is that someone, Richard, took a chance on looking beyond my job title to see my capabilities. Victoria shifted in her seat, but remained attentive as Eliza outlined her proposal, a company-wide initiative to identify and develop hidden talents across all levels of the organization. The program would include skills assessment, mentorship pairings, educational support, and clear pathways for advancement regardless of starting position. This isn't about charity or diversity quotas, Eliza emphasized, addressing the unspoken concern she knew existed among some executives. It's about competitive advantage. We're leaving intellectual capital and human potential untapped, while spending millions recruiting external candidates who may not be any more qualified than people already on our payroll. The financial projections she presented had been developed, in collaboration with Victoria's team, a strategic decision that had transformed her most formidable opponent into a stakeholder. The numbers were compelling: reduced recruitment costs, improved retention, increased productivity, and enhanced company loyalty. The Hidden Talent Initiative would position Garland International not just as a leader in global business, but as a pioneer in human capital development, Eliza concluded. We have an opportunity to create a model that others will follow, one that recognizes excellence can emerge from anywhere given the right conditions to flourish. As she finished, Harold Fleming was the first to speak. Mrs. Morgan, your proposal is intriguing, but potentially disruptive to established hierarchies. How would you address resistance from middle management, who might see this as threatening their authority? It was exactly the question Eliza had prepared for. By making them partners in the process, Mr. Fleming, middle managers would be trained to identify talent and rewarded for developing their team members, even if it means losing. them to other departments, success would be redefined to include not just personal achievement, but the advancement of those they supervise. Richard Garland leaned forward. Implementation costs. Phase 1 would require approximately $1.2 million, Eliza replied, but with projected savings in recruitment and training of $3.7 million in the first year alone. The discussion that followed was vigorous but constructive. To Eliza's surprise, Victoria became one of the program's strongest advocates, offering to co-chair the implementation committee. The financial case is sound, Victoria stated, her analytical precision lending credibility to Eliza's vision. But beyond that, this initiative addresses a significant waste of resources we've all observed, but never systematically tackled. By meeting's end, the Hidden Talent Initiative had received preliminary approval, with a full board presentation scheduled for the following month. As executives filed out, many stopped to congratulate Eliza or offer suggestions for the program's implementation. Harold Fleming lingered until they were alone. "You've come a long way from defending your own position," he observed. "This was always the goal," Eliza admitted. "From the moment Richard took a chance on me, I knew I wanted to create a pathway for others." Fleming nodded thoughtfully. "I had an assistant once. Brilliant woman, spoke 5 languages, had more business instinct in her little finger than most MBAs I've met. But it was the 1980s, and she was a black woman without a college degree. I promoted her as far as I could, but the system wasn't ready." He sighed. "I've often wondered what she might have achieved with the opportunities you're proposing." "It's never too late to find out," Eliza suggested. "She might still be out there." "Indeed." Fleming's eyes crinkled with unexpected emotion. "Perhaps that's a project for my retirement. Speaking of which, I'll be leaving the board next year. I'd like to recommend you for my seat." Eliza stared at him in shock. "Mr. Fleming, I've only been an executive for 6 months. And you've accomplished more meaningful change in that time than most do in a decade." He handed her his card. "Think about it. We need voices like yours at the highest levels." After he left, Eliza stood by the window processing this unexpected development. A board position would represent more than personal advancement. It would be a platform to institutionalize the changes she envisioned. Her phone buzzed with a message from Sophia. "Just aced my certification exam. Celebration dinner tonight." Pride surged through Eliza as she typed back, "Absolutely. I have news to share too. Love you." 2 weeks later, Eliza found herself in an unexpected position, delivering a keynote address at the National Association of Corporate Directors annual conference. Harold Fleming had insisted she replace him as Garland International's representative, arguing that her perspective was exactly what the staid organization needed to hear. Standing at the podium before hundreds of board members from America's largest corporations, Eliza felt momentarily out of place. These were the power brokers of American business, predominantly white, predominantly male, predominantly from privileged backgrounds so different from her own. 3 years ago, she began, I was invisible to most of you. I was the woman who emptied your trash cans and cleaned your coffee cups. I was the background character in your corporate narrative, necessary but unnoticed. The room fell silent, executives shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Today I stand before you as a director of international affairs, soon to be a board member, and the architect of a corporate initiative that is transforming how we think about human potential. The only thing that changed was opportunity. Not my abilities, not my intelligence, not my worth. She shared her story without embellishment or apology, then expanded to the broader implications of the Hidden Talent Initiative and the preliminary results from its pilot program. Participant testimonials brought the data to life. A maintenance worker now in the management training program, a receptionist whose coding skills had been discovered and developed, a cafeteria supervisor whose inventory system was being implemented, company-wide. Talent exists at every level of your organizations, Eliza concluded. The question is not whether it's there, but whether you're willing to see it, nurture it, and benefit from it. The most valuable resource in your company may be serving your coffee right now. Will you notice? The standing ovation that followed surprised even Richard Garland, who had attended in support. As executives lined up to speak with her afterward, Eliza noticed a young man hovering at the edge of the crowd, clearly waiting for an opportunity to approach. When the crowd finally thinned, he stepped forward nervously. "Mrs. Morgan, my name is Luis Reyes. My mother works as a housekeeper at the Grand Plaza Hotel. She speaks 5 languages fluently." Eliza's heart constricted at the pride and pain mingled in his voice. "She helped me through college by working double shifts," he continued. "She's the smartest person I know, but she spent 30 years making beds and cleaning bathrooms because her education from the Dominican Republic wasn't recognized here." "What's your mother's name?" Eliza asked gently. "Carmen Reyes. I've never told anyone at business school about her job. I was ashamed." His voice broke. "But listening to you today, I realized the shame isn't hers. It's in a system that doesn't see her value." Eliza took his hand. "The shame was never hers, and it's not yours either. It belongs to a world that measures worth by titles and credentials rather than character and capability." Luis nodded, blinking. Back tears. "I just got hired at Wellington Financial. I want to create something like your hidden talent program there, but I don't know where to start." "Let me help you," Eliza offered, reaching for a business card. "For your mother and all the others like her." That evening, as her taxi crawled through Manhattan traffic toward her condo, Eliza reflected on how profoundly her life had changed and how much remained to be done. The Hidden Talent Initiative was just beginning. Luis Reyes's mother was just one of countless Carmen Reyeses, and corporate America was only starting to awaken to the potential being wasted within its walls. Her phone rang. "Richard Garland. The board unanimously approved your program this afternoon," he announced without preamble. "Full funding exactly as you proposed." "That's wonderful news," Eliza replied, genuinely surprised by the unanimity. "Was Victoria there for the vote?" "She presented the financial case herself," Richard chuckled. "Quite passionately, I might add. You've made quite an ally there." "Not an ally," Eliza corrected. "A partner." After they hung up, Eliza asked the taxi driver to make a detour. 20 minutes later, she stood outside Garland Tower, looking up at the gleaming skyscraper where her transformation had begun. Through the lobby windows, she could see the evening cleaning crew at work. Men and women in blue uniforms moving efficiently through their routines, invisible to the late-working executives who passed them without a glance. Tomorrow, the Hidden Talent Initiative would begin changing their world. Assessments would be offered, skills would be documented, opportunities would be created. Not all would rise as she had, not everyone wanted an executive path, but all would be seen, valued for more than just their current function. As she turned to leave, Eliza noticed a small plaque being installed beside the main entrance, a dedication she had championed through the renovation committee. It was simple but meaningful. Garland International recognizes the dignity and contribution of every individual who makes our success possible. It wasn't enough, a plaque never could be, but it was a visible symbol of the invisible change beginning to take root within the corporate culture. Small steps accumulating toward transformation. Back in her condo, Eliza opened her closet and reached behind her designer suits to the very back, where a folded blue uniform hung in a protective bag. She had kept it not as a reminder of where she came from, she would never forget that, but as a tangible connection to all those still waiting for their moment to be seen. Sophia called as Eliza was preparing for bed. "Mom, you'll never believe what happened today. Remember that program you told me about, the one you're starting at Garland? The Hidden Talent Initiative?" "Of course. Well, I mentioned it to my nursing supervisor, and she wants to implement something similar at the hospital. She says there are orderlies and custodial staff with medical training from other countries who could be fast-tracked into clinical roles with the right support." Eliza smiled in the darkness of her bedroom. "That's amazing, honey. She wants to meet with you to discuss how to adapt it for healthcare. Is that okay?" "More than okay," Eliza replied, her voice thick with emotion. "It's exactly what I hoped would happen." After they hung up, Eliza stood at her window looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Carmen Reyes was perhaps finishing her evening shift. Somewhere, thousands of others like her were using their gifts in fragments, their potential divided and diminished by circumstances and systems designed without them in mind. But change was coming. Not overnight, not without resistance, but inexorably. One person, one program, one organization at a time. And Eliza Morgan, once invisible, would help lead the way. In the reflection of her window, Eliza saw not just herself, but the shadows of all who had made her journey possible. Her mother, with her insistence on education, the elderly neighbor who had taught her French and German, her late husband, who had believed in her dreams, and Sophia, who had given her a reason to persevere. "We did it," she whispered to them all, "and we're just getting started." As the city hummed below, Eliza made a silent promise to the unseen